right, Evan Ginsberg with another edition of Evan Ginsberg's Legends TV, co-hosted today by John Winnell, our resident poet laureate, and joined by music critic, music journalist, radio host, you represent talent, Renaissance man, Kevin Goins.
Thanks, Evan. Thanks for having me here today.
Welcome, and you are much respected in the music industry, and tell us a little about yourself.
Well, I'll try to give folks the Reader's Digest version.
Okay.
Let's see. Well, started in radio back in '83.
Who were some of your radio influences?
Oh, my goodness.
Frankie Crocker.
Well, of course, Frankie Crocker, yes.
There you go.
But I'd have to give props to my hometown of Rochester, New York. There were a lot of great folks there. There were Jack Palvino, who was one of the main morning show guys who became one of my first bosses in radio. And people like Larry White, Dan Guilfoyle, Ferdinand J. Smith III, who became a music manager. He had discovered the group Skylark, who had the hit record Wildful Hour back in '73. Just a lot of folks in that city. There was a station called WDKX, which was the first and probably the only black-owned and operated radio station. Started in '74.
I used to listen to 12B and WWRL out here in New York.
WWRL 1600.
That's right, 1600, yeah.
So really, they were pretty much my influences. And of course, I always say I kind of went to the school of Cornelius and Clark, which is, Dick Clark, Don Cornelius.
There you go. All right, all right.
Grew up watching, American Bandstand on ABC, then flip the channel, you go over to Soul Train.
That's right.
And
Soul Train early on, a lot of the acts were playing live. It was amazing.
Yes.
James Brown, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Al Green with the cast. Remember?
Yes, he had the sling.
That's right.
Well, with the green suit.
That's right.
Oh my goodness. We're not going to go there about the green suit. Yeah, among other things. But I remember seeing groups like Tower of Power play live there.
The early Soul Trains where they were performing live, they were amazing.
Yes.
Amazing.
Barry White bringing the whole Love Unlimited orchestra there.
God.
But that's pretty much my musical formation. But I also have to give props to two of my siblings. My brother, actually, I'm the youngest of 5.
Wow.
And two of my siblings, my brother Jim and my sister Pam, they taught me how to read by using their record collection.
Interesting. Tell us about that.
Well, my brother Jim...
ABC, the Jackson 5.
Well, yes.
That's easy.
My brother had that album. One of 2 Jackson 5 albums he had. He had a big record collection, and Pam listened to a lot of folk music, a lot of pop stuff, from Simon and Garfunkel to the Friends of Distinction to the Fifth Dimension. But what they, as well as my brother Jesse and Cindy, my sister Cindy would do was they would sit me with the records, and they'd say, well, what does this label say? I said, they said, well, this label says Motown.
Wow.
And, they would read off the copy, and I'd repeat after them.
Some of them were easy, like High Records,
High.
HI, and TK Records.
TK.
That's right.
Or Curtum, which is Curtis
Mayfield.
Curtis Mayfield and Eddie Thomas. Yeah. And what started happening... Solar.
That's it.
Well, what happened was somewhere along the line, as I would say, the memory bank kicked in. And I started memorizing not only the words or whatnot, but where the record labels were located, who distributed them. And I became, as my parents said, I became this little Frankenstein monster.
What was the first record you ever bought?
I'll put it this way. The first record I ever bought with my own money was the Sesame Street soundtrack.
Wow. There you go. You've come a long way.
Yes. Well, look,
it was that Joe Raposo, right?
The late Joe Raposo.
John, what was the first record you ever bought?
I think it was Crosby, Stills, Nash first album. I think. I mean, I had other records. I had all those Fifth Dimension, Let the Sun Shine In, that one with all the Zodiacs. I mean, I had. But I think the first one that I bought at EJ Corvettes.
There you go.
Rode my bicycle.
That's right.
down the hill to
Mine was Tommy James and the Shondells, Moni Moni, and I still don't know what it means 40 years later.
Mutual of New York.
Really?
Yes.
Really?
Mutual of New York.
From Midnight Cowboy, they show.
Well, Tommy James said in an interview that when he had to come up with a hit, You know, he was signed to Roulette Records, run by Morris Levy. You can read Hitman about him. And he looked out of his apartment in Midtown Manhattan, and he sees the Mutual of New York sign flash, and he just wrote a song based on that, and you know, co-wrote it with his producers and the late Bobby Bloom, who went on to write Montego Bay, which was a huge hit.
Wow.
Yeah, but that's what Money came from, Mutual of New York.
My radio mentor over at WBAI-FM in New York, I was there 16 years, was the late Fred Giabold. And he told me that radio is a blank canvas, and the only thing you really need to know is it's 80% the guest and 20% the host. And guys like Howard Stern have flipped that completely. So
Yes.
what's your take on great radio as you're a radio host?
Oh, well, you know, I host and produce 2 shows that are really radio podcasts. One is a show called Soulful Conversations, where we were talking about this before the show began, where I kind of get to interview folks who I grew up admiring, as well as any folks who are current or up and coming. But I like to say that I interview folks who are behind the mics and behind the scenes. So let's say, for example, I was mentioning earlier, my second person I interviewed was Larry Dunn, who was the keyboardist and musical director for Earth, Wind, and Fire. He wrote Shining Star. So he was one who was not only in front of the mic and on stage, you know, especially during the time when Earth, Wind, and Fire used to have Doug Henning choreographed, so you see him flying in the air with his keyboards. You know, he also worked behind the scenes. He, you know, was their musical director and came up with a lot of their tunes. But I also get to interview, you know, folks like Vinnie Barrett, who co-wrote Sideshow and Just Don't Want to Be Lonely with Bobby Eli.
Bobby Eli's on the show next Saturday,
Bobby
right
is
here.
a great guy.
Right here,
I love him to death. Love him to death. A Philly soul man. And I interviewed folks who, like I said, work behind the scenes, like Willie Henderson, who produced Tyrone Davis.
Yeah, Turn Back the Hands of Time.
Turn Back the Hands of Time and Can I Change My Mind?
Yeah.
And played the Barry sax on Etta James's Tell Mama, which was a interesting story there because the song was cut in Muscle Shoals. Yeah. And so I'm like, well, Willie, you know, wait a minute. You're a Chicago guy. He said, Kevin, they brought the multi-track tape back to Chess Records. And
let me ask you quickly, since you mentioned Muscle Shoals, you hear a lot on media in general about, you know, quote-unquote white culture bandits, and then you see a documentary like Muscle Shoals where a lot of these white musicians were on these legendary songs with all the great R&B artists. So what's your take on all of that?
Soul knows no color. Soul knows no color. It
Amen.
knows race. You know, I mean, it's either you got it or you don't.
Yeah, like we were saying, Dwayne Allman and Wilson Pickett on Hey Jude. I mean, what's more soulful than that?
What's more soulful in the fact that Wilson did it on a dare. He did it on a dare.
Oh, that's a great story. Tell that.
Why don't you tell that story quickly?
He did it on the dare. You know, they were, you know, Rick Hall, you know, at the Fame Studios and Muscle Shoals. They were coming up with some songs for Wilson, and Dwayne Allman suggested, hey, why don't you do Hey Jude? And Wilson's like, I don't want to do this song by the Beatles, blah, blah, blah. And Dwayne's like, what's the matter, you chicken?
Yeah.
And it's like, you know, you calling Wilson Pickett chicken is like, you could almost see this big Looney Tune cartoon where all the Muscle Shoals guys like scatter in the corners. And Wilson's like, what did you call me?
Yeah.
And he went in and cut the song. And as I say, if you want to know why Wilson sounded a little ticked off, is because this scrawny dude who could play a hell of a guitar dared him to do it. He did it on a dare.
My favorite Wilson Pickett story. I go to see James Brown, Lloyd Price, and Wilson Pickett at the Westchester County Center, which is in New York. And Wilson Pickett goes, it's great to be here in Philadelphia. The whole crowd, everybody looks at each other. You know, true story. Another time he came to the Nassau Coliseum and he goes, my band isn't here. So it made it a little difficult.
Wow.
Yeah, true story.
How did he pull that?
He couldn't play. He just came out and announced, I'm sorry, my band couldn't make it. They missed flights or whatever. So interesting guy.
So who performed that night?
The New York Nets. It was a Nets game, and Wilson was supposed to do like a little set in between her at the end.
Oh,
you know,
funny.
so it never happened.
That's
Wow.
very funny.
So that was back in the Rick Barry and Dr. J days.
Oh.
Man.
I miss the old days of New York basketball. It's embarrassing today.
Today, I don't know what they're doing up there.
They don't know what they're doing either.
Yeah, I think so.
But tell us about some of your proteges. We're going to see a video clip if you'd like to set it up.
Well, I have a music management company. I call it, the Kevin Goins organization. I figured, Robert Stigwood had
The
Robert
appropriately
Stigwood organization.
named.
Why not?
Yeah.
And I manage and work with different recording artists, and I have 4 acts that I'm really proud of, and we'll see a couple of them today. One of them is a woman named Raj Dalari. She is went to Berkeley. She is a Michigan girl. She's released 2 albums. Her second one, called Journey of a Woman, charted on Billboard's top 200 R&B listings and the top 200 R&B/hip-hop listings. Like, okay, 2 charts, R&B related, we'll take it.
Yeah.
The album went to #1 on the Starpoint Radio UK Soul Chart.
Wow.
So then we're very, very, very happy for her and her success. And another artist, his name is Abia. He is he's Guyanese, but he's also from my hometown of Rochester, New York. We have many things in common, like the same vocal music teacher from high school. But Abia has recorded a couple of albums, his last one being called Life as a Ballad, which he does a lot of ballads. I've heard one reviewer kind of called him like the male answer to Nina Simone, which is
Wow, that's so.
Yeah.
John's a big Nina Simone.
Yeah.
I love Nina Simone.
And it's just like that's one of his personal heroes, as well as Anita Baker.
Okay.
And he's now working on a new album called Bottles, which is going to be out in or sometime within the next few months here in 2015.
All right, so we're going to go to the videotape.
Okay.
Enjoy, folks.
Been a skinny girl, I got curves you could see clear across the world. But I'm a real strong sister with a big old dream. You should never judge a book by its cover, you see. Stand tall, embracing my identity. 'Cause ain't a damn thing false when it comes to me. Took a long time, now I'm feeling fancy free. Listen, let me tell you how I came to be. Guess what? Hey girl, did you know that you're fly? Hey girl, and you're the apple of his eye. 'Cause you shine, you just right. You shine, you're just right. When I was a little girl and I watched TV, I thought that I could never be like the girls on the screen. Straight hair, long legs, I felt so ashamed. Knew my hips would never match what the TV portrayed. Flashback to when I was about 14. I had fake long nails and a big old weave. I tried every diet trying to be size 10. Used to get so dizzy that my head would spin. Hey girl, now I know that I'm fly. And I'm the apple of his eye. The face staring back at me. Cut off my hair, trimmed down my nails real low, hoping that my beauty would show. But today I can say that it feels so good to be me. I can say my curves are beautiful, they make me shine, they make me fine, and now I know that I'm just right. Hey girl, don't you know that I'm fly? Hey girl, and I'm the apple of his eye. 'Cause I shine, I'm just right. Sure that I'll give you what you need.
right. And we're going to take a quick commercial break, but before we do that, John Winnell is going to read for us later in the show. Plug your book, John.
Yeah, it's poems for everyday people, and you can contact me if you're interested at John Winnell, JONWINELL, at yahoo.com, or John Winnell at Facebook, and we'll arrange something if you like it. And there's still some copies left, not too many. I have to do another printing, but yeah, I hope if you're interested.
Kevin, please give out any contact information.
Oh, sure. I have a show called New Grooves that I'm starting up in January, and the email address is newgroovesradio@gmail.com. My radio show, Soulful Conversations and In the Groove, and the New Grooves show will all be part of the Mixcloud channel. So just type in Music Man Kevin, and you'll see all the interviews come up in the music shows too.
There you go. And Kevin's going to stay with us. And in our next segment, Tommy Maher, the co-owner of Madhouse Studios, Madhouse TV, and also a singer in his own right, very talented individual. He'll be singing for us later. He'll be joining the conversation. We're going to talk music for the next 20 minutes. Don't go anywhere, folks.
Hi, my name is Dr. Tom Dow. We have a multidisciplinary practice in Melville and Ronkonkoma, New York, and we treat patients with many, many different conditions, from newborns through geriatric patients with numerous different techniques. There's a technique and a type of treatment for every class of patient. We have them all here. Here's my son Thomas, also a doctor of chiropractic, working on one of our patients' cervical spine. This patient has had chronic neck pain for many, many, many years, has been to a multitude of different practitioners with little or no response. And with our specialized techniques, she has improved tremendously and continues to improve on a daily basis. We have two practices, one in Melville and one in Ronkonkoma, New York. We are a multidiscipline chiropractic office. What that means is we have chiropractors, massage therapists, acupuncturists, psychologists, all working as a team and a network of outside professionals such as orthopedists and neurologists that we work hand in hand with to help determine what your injuries are and the best way to treat your injuries. I have the great pleasure of having my son in practice with me. We work hand in hand, father and son, to give our patients the best care possible, and a staff which is loving, caring, and you'll never have to wait at all in our office for service. Many times patients come into our office and they have what's called a soft tissue injury. Soft tissue injuries are like scars inside your body. If you've ever been cut on the outside of your body, you get a scar. The same thing happens inside of your body to your muscles and ligaments. So our job is to determine where those are, stretch the muscles, adjust the vertebra back into their correct position, and then refortify the normal structure with exercise. That's what we do best, and I hope someday you'll come see us at one of our two offices. Thank you.
And we are back, ladies and gentlemen, and we are joined by Tommy Maher, co-owner of Madhouse TV, an artist in his own right. How are you today, Tommy?
Hanging in there, Evan. How are you?
Good, good,
Always
good.
a pleasure to be with you.
Thank you so much. And You've been on the road with some of the greats. You've actually played with Wilson Pickett. Tell us a little about your own history.
We did a little thing in Ocean City, Maryland. A one-time thing. I got to actually hang out with him for a weekend. And
what was that like, a weekend with Wilson?
Well, he was with his wife,
oh, okay.
so it was okay.
There you go.
But you know,
there you go.
he's still one of my heroes, though. I mean, the guy is just, to me, should be in every conversation with the top guns in the world, without a doubt.
How do you rate Wilson Pickett, Kevin, among the all-time greats?
Well, it definitely would be in the top 10.
Definitely.
Definitely top 10. During my years writing liner notes for different reissues, I got to speak with folks like George Patterson and Charles Skip Pitts, who are sadly no longer with us, but they were part of Wilson's band, the Midnight Movers. And the stories, some of them I was able to write, some of them had to be put under the category of classified information. But if you go on YouTube, you punch in the Wilson Pickett gig at the San Reno Festival from '67, '68, and you'll see the Midnight Movers and Wilson in full action there.
Well, I was actually surprised when John brought up Hey Jude, because that is something that not many people know. Because I tell everybody, you want to listen to Hey Jude, listen to the Wilson Pickett version of Hey Jude, because it is incredible, incredible.
Tom Jones
Put Dwayne Allman on the map.
Tom Jones, who does the voice over in the UK, he's one of the judges, and in his coaching sessions, he's trying to get the male singers to sing with soul, and he's like, "You guys need to hear Wilson Pickett do Hey Jude."
Right.
He just said,
that
"You
is
just
no
need
lie.
to
That's it.
just listen to that record. You know, you guys really need some to go to school."
And I've been I've known about that song for many, many years, and I know so many guys my age, which is pretty old, and they never even knew that existed. And then I turn them on to it. They're like, "Oh my God, how is that not on the radio every day?"
Right.
You know,
Certainly
it's
should be.
incredible.
Somebody should be playing that every day.
Without a doubt.
Somewhere
Without
in the
a doubt.
world.
Just the whole beat, the way it comes off.
Right.
And Wilson Pickett was very competitive with James Brown, and James Brown was very competitive with Jackie Wilson. Who do you guys rate as the greatest R&B performer of all time?
James Brown.
James Brown. I agree.
JB.
I mean, I never saw it, but I guess. How about I put Otis up there too, but
I don't even rate him as the greatest R&B. I rate him as the greatest entertainer. Maybe Sammy Davis, in different areas, maybe more all around. He used to do the guns and everything, but
he had everything.
for sheer talent on the stage, I think he was the greatest.
Michael Jackson studied the footage from the Tammy Show. Michael Jackson studied Jackie Wilson. Michael Jackson also lip synced. Nothing to take away from him. The guy was incredible. But I put James over Michael. What do you think?
Oh, God.
Well, the master and the student.
There you go.
No question. I have a great story for you that you probably would enjoy. A very good friend of mine is going to be on my show very shortly. Was James Brown's bass player. I know you might know T.M. Stevens.
I've heard of him. Yes.
He played with the Pretenders for 10 years also.
Oh, that's right.
But T.M. is a real good friend. I was on the phone with him yesterday. We were talking. He sent me 2 documentaries that he did, and he's going to come on my show. He just came back from Germany. But he played bass for James, and I said, TM, because we're both TM. So he goes, yeah, TM.
Right.
So he said, I said, was James really, really like that, where he was that strict? If you missed a note, you were fined. If you were late, you were fined. He goes, oh, no doubt about it. He says, he says, one time, he said, I was young, and he said, I just wanted to watch the man work. So he said, he peeked his head out the door, and James was on the stage rehearsing, and he goes, where my background singers? Where my background singers? So he goes, you boy. He goes, oh, Mr. Brown, I'm not a background singer. I'm the bass player. He goes, you a background singer now. So when you hear, living in America, T.M. Stevens.
Really? Interesting.
Wow.
True story.
And Tommy, tell us about your show and what's happening at Madhouse.
Oh, well, busy, getting some incredible talents coming on. I mean, I've had, I've had with The Who, we've had 10 Years After, we've had the Vanilla Fudge Cactus, Spirit, George Thorogood.
Bobby Rush.
Bobby Rush.
I love Bobby Rush.
Coco Montoya.
John Mayall, didn't you?
John Mayall. We just did Dana Fuchs, which is now my new love of the world in music. I'm telling you.
Yes.
I was just invited to interview her at the Rubin Museum on 17th Street in the city. And it was something I've never seen. I thought I saw it all, and it was something I've never seen. She actually did a show, no electric, no microphone, her guitar player, just an acoustic guitar, no amp, and just sat there and just sang. I mean, and blew this place. I mean, I was just, I wanted to see the band, because if you want to hear Dana Fuchs, check out her B.B. King's video from I'd Rather Go Blind Than See You Walk Away.
Wow.
I will have to say no more. That girl just flat out can just blow. Like, I mean, she is incredible, and she's such a soulful emotion, which today's music really, I think, lacks the emotion and the soul. You know, I mean, if you want to take me on your journey, you got to make me a believer. And that
You
girl
mean
makes
you don't
me
like
a believer.
auto-tune, I guess?
No. But she was. Wait till you see that interview. It was incredible. Absolutely.
And that's the Maverick Soul Hour Sundays?
The Maverick Soul Hour with Tommy Maher on Sunday nights at 8 o'clock. We took the Ed Sullivan Hour back from Ed.
There you go.
And,
all right. All right.
It's actually working out great. And the great part, I mean, I just had one of the OJs on my show 2 weeks ago that broke world news that the R&B world was waiting to hear. You know, Nathan Best.
Yes, I've heard of Nathan.
And there was a big discrepancy of why he left, and he was hearing rumors in England, and he was hearing rumors in Germany that there was a big fight with the OJs and that. And he said, he called me up from Mississippi. I don't even, I don't know the guy. He calls me up and says, I want to come on your show and make this world announcement. And I was like, really? and he came up and he performed right there with his band, and it was incredible. And actually, if you really want to know, the reason he left the OJs was because he wanted to follow God. He's now a pastor in a church, and God bless him. And I tell you, I talked to him yesterday. The man is as good as anybody. I mean, the guy is phenomenal. He has a new album out. Pick up his CD. It's a gospel kind of R&B gospel thing. Fabulous, unbelievable.
Right.
Anything new at Madhouse? You have some new shows coming up?
Lots of, it's not called the Madhouse for nothing. Every day something new is happening. There are some new shows coming. We have about 30 shows now. There's a lot of exciting things happening, and we'll probably be doing the Blues Fest in Canada again, and I'm looking forward to that. But a lot of it's gaining. The word is getting around the world. I mean, we're Skyping people in from Australia, all over the world on some of these shows, spirituality shows, and there's just the variety of shows. It's just like
This
TV.
is like Ed Sullivan.
It's kind of like old Ed, yeah.
I'm going to start twirling plates.
That's
Kind of
right.
like it's
While
kind
you're
of like
doing
the
poetry.
It's kind of like the Evan Ginsberg show,
Right.
where you have wrestlers and poets and rappers and
That's right.
I mean,
Rappers with doo-wop singers.
Where can you get that? Where can you get that? We also have Mickey B too, which has every doo-wop guy in the world on. I mean, he's had everybody that's ever been anybody on the show.
That's right.
Incredible, and the knowledge that they have, him and Paulie, it's incredible. I work the cameras, and I just love hearing the nostalgia of stories,
An eclectic mix here at Madhouse TV.
Without question, and rightfully named, that's for sure.
So Kevin, what's the state of R&B in 2015? You always hear hip hop is dead, jazz is dead, blues are dead, R&B is dead. That's bull. Right?
We had this discussion in social media. You and I, you started it because you were just like, enough is enough. The music's out there.
Sure.
And I believe that the music's out there. It's just how to find it, how to come across it is becoming more difficult.
Sure.
And it had become more difficult over time. I always remind people whatever you hear on commercial radio is not. It's not the blueprint of what the whole genre or genres are all about. So. So there are a lot of independent folks, and there are even some folks who were on major labels who have went independent who are still creating great music. It's just they have to find other ways to get their music from point A to point Z.
Sure.
And whether it's social media, whether it's streaming, whether it's podcasting. That's why I started New Grooves, which is going to debut on through Mixcloud. And I'll also put it on SoundCloud as well, is to give a platform for a lot of this music that you're not going to hear on a commercial radio station, a place to be heard. Artists who you will probably not hear on commercial radio stations, or commercial broadcast stations, I should say, give them a place to be heard.
Well, that's what we do on the Maverick Soul Hour, too.
Exactly.
Not only do we have the name people, But I truly believe, and I truly believe this, I'm pretty in touch with what's going on in the music world, and I truly believe that Long Island is the music mecca of the world. I mean, there is more. I could take you within a 5-mile radius on any Friday, Saturday, Thursday night, and you will hear the greatest artists. You're like, how could I have not ever heard of this? So we try to showcase them, too.
Yes.
You know, because like I had this kid 2 weeks ago, Dylan Kay. I mean, I met him at the Jimi Hendrix party at B.B. King's, and he sang with Robbie Krieger from The Doors, and the kid like blew the place up. So I had him on the show, and he blew the stage up here. Now that kid deserves a shot, and he would be obsolete. You know, he would never got that shot.
Absolutely.
Singing
You know?
with Robbie
And a lot of
Krieger.
producers are watching the show now. I've had a couple get signed already
That's
off the
great.
show, and it's great exposure, which you also do too. I mean, he does the same thing with what was her name with the At Last?
At last, yeah.
I mean,
Cooley
she was.
Eyes,
I mean, some of the talent that he's had on here. I mean, Solomon Witherspoon.
oh yeah.
I mean, my
Out of
God, the
Minnesota.
guy
Great
is
R&B out of Minnesota.
unbelievable,
Yeah,
unbelievable.
I also have to chime in because there's 2 other artists who I manage as well. One of them is from, you know, you're proud of Long Island, of course, you know, and I have, being from Rochester, New York, which had groups like the Rustics, the Invictus, a lot of bands that came out of the 60s and 70s, Duke Jupiter, who got signed to Mercury and then CBS, and of course the Mangione brothers, Chuck and Gap Mangione, you know.
Right out of
Enough
Rochester.
said. One of the acts I manage is a group called Anonymous Willpower, and they are a blues rock band, and I kind of call Susie Willpower. She's like, if you take a little bit of Janis Joplin, but a lot of Lydia Pensome cold blood, that's what you get with her. As well as a vocalist I work with named Brooke McRoberts, who she's in New Mexico now. She's like, you know, the next step beyond the Celine Dion's and the Mariah Careys. So you know, again, it's part of showing off that there are other talents that you are not going to see or hear through the, dare I say, the clear channels of the world, the citadels
I
of the
give you
world.
two avenues you can go.
Yes.
You know, you can go on the Evan Ginsberg show.
Of course.
Or the Maverick Soul Hour. Send them on over. We love that. We love that.
I'd be happy to
And
send them.
we put them out to the world
I'd be
live.
Happy to send them over. Send all of them over.
Yeah.
And speaking of live, Tommy's going to perform live later, as
Oh,
will
Lordy.
John. So tell us, what would you advise a young artist today who's coming up? And, you know, the cards are stacked against them, especially if they're not kids. I've pitched artists to record labels, and they said, we're looking for 13 to 16-year-olds. What if you're 21? Are you over the hill? I mean,
You're out.
it's insane.
It's sad.
I mean,
Yeah.
I mean, look, you know, someone asked me the question: would a Bill Withers, who has now been inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, long overdue, I will say, will he have gotten a chance nowadays? I'd probably say hell no, because when he broke out, how old was he? 33 years old, and even for 1971, that was like you were pushing middle. You were pushing.
You know who's made
But-
it in spite of the odds? Avery Sunshine.
Yes.
She's awesome.
We've talked
Awesome,
about
yeah.
Avery. You know, great R&B
Didn't Sharon
vocalist and singer.
Sharon Jones.
Sharon
started.
Jones.
Charles Bradley.
Yes.
But it's unusual.
But to answer your question about, you know, what would an artist do? And I thought about this on the way over here. First of all is find a niche that is not being served and serve them.
That's right.
Find a niche that's being ignored, where there's an audience that would love to hear music within that particular niche or genre. And if you got the goods within that niche, serve them, because that's how you cultivate your audience. Use whatever channels you can to get your word out, whether it's emails, whether it's social media,
Yeah, I can't get enough.
or just, God dang it, book, you know, get on the phone, get a gig somewhere,
Sure.
even if it's a porch show, even if it's a show in a smaller venue.
Any exposure.
Get any exposure, promote the hell out of yourself.
I'll take it a step further. I tell artists, you know, I've interviewed thousands of A-list comedians. They all have their own radio. They all have their own podcast. I don't know why musicians don't embrace that. Do your own radio. Do your own TV. Get your music out. Get your peers' music out.
That's what Raj Dalari and I are working on for 2015. She is going to develop her own TV channel through
There you
social
go.
media.
Beautiful.
Call it Roz Delari TV, where she'll interview
right.
other musicians and put it out through social media as well as perform. And I said, look, fine, work for Dinah Shore.
Yeah.
You know.
You know what's funny though, like what you're saying about the age discrimination, but if you really look into reality, the people that are still selling out the stadiums are the old
Stones.
guys.
Yeah, yeah, Madonna.
They're the old guy. You know,
The dinosaurs.
and DJs now. That
Yeah,
just
DJs, yeah.
I'm just in another world with that.
Yeah, spinning other people's stuff.
I don't, and I mean, you know, like they had that, I forget what it was called up in Bethel Woods this year. And they were expecting like 150,000 people for this guy, a DJ.
Wow, interesting.
You know, then the other guy walks around a mouse head. And I don't. Paris Hilton, you know, she's a rock star, a DJ. I mean, what is that all about?
Well, I'll tell you what it's all about. What it is that they've seen other DJs who were really like musicologists, music geeks, who knew how to mix music and put it together in a package, as well as having some musical skills to bring to the table. And they figure, well, look, if Frankie Knuckles can do this,
no, but my
so
thing
can
is,
I, you know,
they're not dancing. They're just.
they're spit.
You know, I mean, you can listen to that at home.
But,
you
but that's just it. That's just it. That's what a lot of these mixes. Grandmaster Flash was known for it. Tony Humphries was known for it in the 90s. You know, they specialize in bringing together different musics, different genres, and mixing it all together and playing it for an audience.
But my point is, what I think is, what I'm trying to say is that going back to what you originally said, that these great artists are not getting the exposure that they really deserve, and the people that are getting the exposure are these man-made, you know, conveyor belt, you know. Well, I don't want to mention names, but you know who I'm talking about. And they're not even their own vocals. They're make-believe vocals. They're, you know, auto-tune and wah, 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 wah. You know, I mean, you know, and there's a lack of, but it's there. It's there. You just have to go find it. And you know, and when you see these people, help them out. You know, it's like when I see somebody good, I blow them all over my Facebook pages and everything. Like, listen to this.
Well, I will say this is that, you know, I don't look to Paris Hilton to be breaking records.
Yeah.
Okay. I just don't. I'm not looking for Paris Hilton to break records, but that's what a Frankie Knuckles did. He gave another person a chance to be heard.
Sure.
Same with Tony Humphries. There was a dance record that came out on Strictly Rhythm. If I remember, Evan, Follow Me by Alias,
Okay.
which Tony Humphries played on his show and his club. And what happened? BLS picked up the record and Bang Zoom went to the moon. You know, that's what Larry Levan did at the Paradise Garage. He played other folks' records and gave them the break.
Right.
And
Well, that's cool.
and then what happened? Frankie Crocker would walk into the Paradise Garage and look up and like, what's he playing?
Yeah.
And then what happened? 48 hours later, you heard it on BLS.
See, the beauty of Frankie Crocker is he would play music of all different genres, from Latin jazz to straight jazz to R&B to hip hop to whatever the case may be, and that was a beautiful mix, and you don't see a lot of that anymore. It's very regimented.
That's because when Frankie Crocker came out, he was really one of the last radio programmers who basically programmed the stations.
Right.
Having worked in radio, and this is no disrespect to my ex-bosses, if they're watching, forgive me for saying this, but when I came into radio in January of 1983, it was pretty much run by consultants. It was pretty much, you know, you tested the record through call-out research, audience research, before you even thought of putting it on the radio. And I'm going, the hell is this? You know. But then again, what Frankie did, he was one of the last radio programmers who basically heard a record in a club or heard a record somewhere in a record store and put it on the air.
And he had good ears.
And he had great ears.
I mean, there's still like some of the college stations. I mean,
college radio will always be there.
A shout out to Phil Shapp and, you know, those guys doing their thing.
Yes.
I mean, that
On
are
the third take on December 7, 1937,
No,
Phil
but
Shapp.
we learned so much about jazz from
Yeah.
I mean that station is just dynamite.
He has an
Play
encyclopedic knowledge of jazz. You know Phil Shapp?
Yes,
He's
of
amazing.
course.
He's amazing.
I've actually heard him correct musicians on the show, and he was right.
Interesting.
But I don't understand, though, like, why doesn't someone go back to the Berry Gordy theory of put him in the front door as an unknown and out the back door as a superstar? I mean, like, you watch a show like The Voice. Now, I think it's actually a great show. I think it's great. I like, number one, that they're not judged by appearance. I love that. Because, I mean, to me, I don't care what you look like. If you're getting a message to me, I'm good with it. I don't care if you're 3,000 pounds. I don't care.
Right.
But I like that show. And then you watch, and that's a show. It's not like the other one, the Idol one, where you have these clowns coming on making fools of themselves. And, and this is supposed to be entertainment. But these kids can really sing. And you go like, why aren't they making the records rather than these other ones that really don't have the talent, and they're making millions and millions and millions and selling millions of records? I'm like, God, I mean, anyone on The Voice.
Because the record companies say, we want to mold the next Justin Bieber. We want to get somebody that looks a certain way. Yeah, exactly.
That's what you get.
And
that's good.
Yeah, it's a shame.
Not good.
It's terrible. Yeah.
And here's the real kick in the head is because there was a time in the 50s and in the 60s when Berry Gordy emerged with Motown, that where you did not want to have someone who sounded like somebody else. Classic story. Why did Jackie Wilson's manager turn down Smokey Robinson and the Miracles? He said, we already have a group with 4 guys and a girl called the Platters.
Right.
Wow.
And Berry Gordy was in the room.
And Berry Gordy was in the room saying, give me a gas.
He chased him down the hallway.
Exactly.
He chased him down the hallway.
He chased him down the hallway. But it was like the mindset of, if we wanted a group like, if we wanted a Justin Bieber circa 1957, God forbid, if we wanted a Justin Bieber, we'll just go out and get Justin Bieber.
Right.
We don't want someone who is just a clone.
Right.
But that whole trajectory changed,
But I mean, it's the old thing. If it's not broke, why fix it? You know what I mean?
Right.
I mean, why isn't it being run like that? I mean, I think it's. I honestly think it's just a bunch of fat cats with a lot of money that don't know the music business. They don't know what good music is.
Or you have folks who were in the industry for a very long time, and they basically are just going to duplicate what was successful before.
Yeah, it's
in other forms.
Right.
Not saying it's right, not saying it's wrong.
Now, I mean, in my head, I still sit and wonder how Usher picked this kid out. And because, I mean, if you go back to when he came out, I mean, what
who knows?
I mean, obviously he made a lot of money with him.
Right. But you mentioned about The Voice, and I said to folks, I said, if you really want to know how the record industry used to be run back in the day, watch The Voice.
I agree.
Because because when you see the first episode where their backs are turned,
that's what I love.
It reminded me of the story that Herb Alpert relayed about how he learned the music business, which was from Sam Cooke. And he said that Sam Cooke taught him to, when you listen to it, when you audition somebody, turn your back to them, close your eyes, and if they've got it, they got it. If they don't, they don't. Because what it boils down to is a cold piece of wax or vinyl. Wow. So when I look at The Voice and I see their backs are turned, that's what you're judging on. You're judging on your ears.
Right. There you go.
And then if it moves you, then you turn around.
Right.
Also, I love seeing Blake Shelton.
I do too.
Blake is
and I got to admit, when I first saw him, I was like,
yes.
What is this guy doing here? I did.
Yes.
But the only thing I don't think is it's a little unfair, because I'll tell you one thing about country western people, they stick together.
Oh, absolutely.
Like when this last guy was the only guy left, but he was the only, he was getting all them votes, you know what I mean?
Well, and that also reflects where a lot of broadcast radios has gone in the last 20 years.
And you see a lot of R&B guys going there. You see a lot of rock guys going there.
And someone asked me, well, why is country music so dominant and popular is because, like you said, they all stick together.
Do.
There's that camaraderie.
Without a doubt.
And when you go to Nashville, it's a tough nut to crack. But once you earned your way in there, because I had a friend of mine who, in the 90s, wanted to learn the art of the craft of songwriting. He went to Nashville, and he said for this first 6 months, they looked at him like, who the heck are you? But once he just hung around, he listened, he asked questions, and he learned. He just sat there and watched. And then finally, after a while, they're like, okay, Richard, come on in.
I think Christopherson was a janitor working in Nashville before he cut that famous record. He was hanging around, I guess, had all these great songs, and there he was right on.
There's a million of those stories.
Yes.
Well, guys, unfortunately, we're running out of time for this segment. We'll have to hear these stories some other time. But I just want to acknowledge Steve Ludwig, my usual co-host, who was quite sick yesterday. We want to send a get well wish to Steve. And Steve had booked Paul Cowsill and Nicole Bass. So what we're going to do is have them on later in January. And I also want to show this brief clip of Steve's radio show. And Steve is on Classic Pop Culture Radio at planetludwig.com. Check this out, folks. We're going to go to a commercial after this, and when we come back, we have wrestling historian Scott Wilson with some incredible wrestling memorabilia, very rare. Later in the show, poet John Winnell and Tommy Maher with a live music set. So don't you dare go anywhere. Check out this clip first.
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Come on, Bob with the twist! I'm gonna dance with you, baby. Come on, Bob with the twist. Come on, baby, Bob with the twist. If you dance with me, I will do that side. Come on, baby, Bob with the twist. Baby, my love is wrong. Come on, Bob with the twist. Come on, come on, come on. Behind the Bob, free Bob. Come on, Bob with the twist. Come on, baby, Bob with the twist. You do the best shit but down. Yeah, but do that. Come on, baby, Bob with the twist. Baby, my love is Bob. Come on, Bob with the twist. Come on, come on. Come on now, Bob with the Bob with the Bob with the twist. Bob with the Bob with the Bob with the twist. Bob with the Bob with the Bob with the twist. Bob with the Bob with the Bob with the twist. Come on, baby. Come on, Bob with the twist. 1, 2, 3, move!
For nearly a decade, Evan Ginsberg's Legends Radio has featured interviews with the greatest names in the arts and sports. Heard worldwide at legendsradio.net, the program has featured these great musical legends: Ray Manzarek of The Doors, Billy Corgan of Smashing Pumpkins, Judy Collins, Roberta Flack, and many more. Stars from movies, TV, and comedy have included Jenny McCarthy, Wayne Brady, 30 Rock's Judah Friedlander, Shelley Berman, Jackie the Joke Man Martling, David Allen Greer, and Paul Mooney. Stars of pro wrestling and MMA include Bruno Sammartino, Rowdy Roddy Piper, Superstar Billy Graham, and Frank Shamrock. Co-hosted by renowned journalist Dr. Mike Lano, Legends Radio is heard Wednesdays 7 p.m. to 9:20 p.m. Eastern Standard. We are archived 24/7 with hundreds of hours of classic interviews. Legends Radio also features the best in indie music, showcasing talent deserving wider exposure.
I'm from Brooklyn, baby. Don't forget the gravy. We are soldiers.
You missed the birth of your mother and father. Don't you dare miss Evan Ginsberg's Legends Radio.
Yo, what's up, y'all? This is me, G.
MC in the place to be, the greatest MC in history. There will never be an MC greater than me. And right about now, the only place for you to be is with your one and only Madhouse TV.
You are the man.
1.3 million women are victims of physical assault by an intimate partner each year. According to the National Coalition Against Domestic Violence, the majority of cases aren't reported to the police. Most people who are in an abusive relationship don't even know they're in one. The truth is, all abusive relationships boil down to one thing: control.
How do you like it? My new dress.
Are you out of your mind? You look like a prostitute. We're not going out with you dressed up like that in public.
But what am I supposed to wear?
Wear something decent. You can't wear that out in public. We're going to be late. Get back in there and pick a different outfit. I'm going to go run some errands. I'll be back in 30 minutes. Please be ready, okay?
Fine, I'll change. Fine.
Abuse is not always physical, leaving wounds that are visible on the outside. Emotional abuse is just as painful, only these wounds are hidden on the inside.
Are you out of your mind? You're crazy. You look like a prostitute.
Know that abuse is abuse, no matter what the form.
Look at me.
Oh my God, what's wrong with me?
Physical abuse scars the body.
I just wanted to love me.
But mental abuse scars the mind.
What you just saw was an example of a relationship that is emotionally abusive. Nobody has the right to tell you how to dress or how to act. If someone really cares for you, they won't tear you down. They will build you up.
How do you like it?
Wow. You look great. Fantastic. But then again, you look great all the time.
Thank you. I was hoping you'd like it. It's my new dress. I bought it just so we could go out tonight.
You look stunning.
Thank you. But I think I'm going to take a sweater just in case it gets cold tonight.
Great idea. I'm going to take one too. Let's go.
All relationships are not perfect, but a healthy relationship is when two people bring out the best in each other and have each other's good in mind. Take your time to know someone instead of rushing into something. It is better not to involve yourself with an abusive person than to try and get out of a domestic violence situation.
If someone is abusive to you and you need help, please call the Domestic Violence Hotline at 1-800-799-SAFE. That's 1-800-799-SAFE. They have highly trained experts available 24/7 who will speak with you confidentially and offer information regarding the unhealthy aspects of your relationship, resources, or immediate support for victims to find safety and live lives free of abuse. Domestic violence affects us all.
It affects us all.
Nos afecta a todos.
It affects us all.
모두에게 영향을 줍니다.
Che ci ricarte tutte.
It affects us all.
Domestic violence.
And we are back, ladies and gentlemen, and we are joined by Scott Wilson, a dear friend and a wrestling historian. And you've brought some interesting things to show us.
Thanks for having me, Evan. Happy New Year. God bless everybody. Fine seeing these fine gentlemen talking about Motown. And what more can you say about Marvin Gaye? I don't know. But
Did you ever hear the Hear My Dear album?
Yes.
That is painful. Great, but painful.
I had, when I worked at a record store in Manhattan, HMV on West 72nd and Broadway, and that was the one album that many men bought when they were going through a breakup or divorce.
That was the divorce
That
album.
was the album. They're like, we heard that Marvin did this Hear My Dear about his divorce. One guy even bought 3 copies. One for him, 2 for his friends. Like,
that's right.
I'm like, wow.
When did you stop loving me? When did I stop loving you? How painful is that?
Very painful. Yeah.
Scott said Trouble Man's his favorite.
Yeah, but he also went into a deep depression when Tammy Terrell got sick.
And died, yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And that's what spurred him to go in to do What's Going On. But you mentioned Trouble Man.
Is Trouble Man his, or because that's a Kurt Weill
movie?
That was a movie.
Movie soundtrack.
With Robert Hooks from the show NYPD. He was in that film. And
Trouble Man was written by Kurt Weill's from the 40s, from Lost in the Stars,
different songs.
Which is also very, political.
Yes.
But I don't know whose music can move your emotions more if you close your eyes and listen to it than his, really. Well, James Brown, as you said before, to me would have been one of the greatest natural entertainers that ever lived. When you watch some of the footage from the 60s on Ed Sullivan or whatnot.
Unbelievable. Greatest footage ever made.
50th anniversary was December 29th, 1964, when it was nationally rolled out.
Some show.
In my heart, I saw James probably 12 times. I love James Brown, Chuck Brown, Al Green, Kid Creole and the Coconuts, Sun Ra. I love Sun Ra. I know, what's wrong with this picture, but I love Sun Ra.
There's nothing
Charles
wrong with
Lloyd, all that.
I saw Chuck Berry live.
Chuck Berry was awesome.
Awesome.
Curtis Mayfield.
Thank you.
There you go.
How about Otis Redding?
I never saw him live, though.
Well, how many?
But let's break off the ladies. You mentioned Tammy Terrell.
Oh, yeah.
You know,
tragic.
Martha Reeves of the Vandellas.
I love
Shaka. The Marvelettes.
Yeah.
You know,
I'm so old. I used to see Ella Fitzgerald, Carmen McRae, Sarah Vaughan, etc. So on. All great. Gladys Knight.
Ella Fitzgerald. What can you say?
I saw Gladys Knight and Ashford and Simpson perform at Frankie Crocker's memorial service in 2000. Amazing.
Look at Tony Bennett too. Tony Bennett's an offshoot
Still
of Sarah
out there.
Vaughan. Unbelievable.
With Lady Gaga.
Unbelievable. Yeah, I saw it.
And I think it's doing well. I mean, I haven't heard it, but
I was so depressed when James Brown and Chuck Brown died. Those were 2 of my heroes.
December 25th, 2006.
Christmas. That's right. Christmas. Yeah.
I woke up in the, wrapping presents, and I'm watching CNN, and I see the James Brown. I see the obituary date. I'm going, am I awake?
He was larger than life. You never thought he would actually go. It's hard
and
to
on
explain.
Christmas.
On Christmas.
Do you know what?
And Joe Cocker, we want to acknowledge.
Absolutely.
Great vocalist.
Do you know who was a profound influence on James Brown? They died basically the same time of the year was Gorgeous George, the original Gorgeous George, with the capes and showmanship and everything else.
Yes. Which brings us back to the wrestling.
Back to wrestling capes.
Okay.
Yes.
Show us some of your stuff, Scott.
Speaking of Motown, speaking of Detroit, this vest belongs to the late great Ox Baker, who we should pay tribute to because he passed away in October. This over here belongs to Dave Drayson, who was a manager in the Detroit area. It's part of my collection.
And you'll be wearing that out tonight, right, Scott?
Yeah. We're gonna go to a funny bar, and I'm gonna model this. And
Dave Drayson was on the show. He's very colorful.
Yeah, that's one reason. Nice fellow, gentleman, friend of mine. Ox Baker gave that to me in 2011. He came to my house and stayed over one night. We went to a wrestling show, and when he got up in the morning, he said, "I want you to keep this. This is my gratitude for your son cooking me breakfast."
Really?
And yeah, we got up on a Sunday morning. Doug, and another fellow were there, and Don Klein, his name is, gentleman, dear friend of me. And Ox started singing for breakfast in the morning. They were going to wake up the whole neighborhood with his booming voice, And my son made him eggs and stuff. And
Ox Baker was in Escape from New York for the non-wrestling fans. Very colorful guy, larger than life. And what about this
over
mask
here? We have
that's you, right?
Yeah, that was me on a bad day. That's an actual death mask of Tor Johnson. You know who Tor Johnson was?
Sure, from the Ed Wood
Right,
the
that's
Edward
right,
film
that's
series. Yeah, some of the worst movies ever made. The campy horror movies from the 50s. He was a professional
Plan 9,
wrestler for
right?
years.
Wow.
Plan 9 from Outer Space. He did a few others. He worked a lot with Bela Lugosi, especially at the end before Bela died.
And why was a death mask made?
I don't know. I saw it. I saw it on eBay one day and had to have it. You know me. So.
Interesting.
That was about his movie, Beast of Yucca Flats. Did you ever see that one? That's an all-time classic and one of the worst ones ever made.
Wow.
I think he was. He looked like somebody we know from the modern era before that person came along. I think you know what I'm talking about.
George the Animal Steel.
I'm not
who
gonna
played him in the Ed Wood movie? Absolutely.
Over here, you have a TV guide from 1953 featuring.
Jimmy Durante was quite a wrestler.
That's right.
Yeah. No, I'm joking.
He used to knock him down with his nose, right? Featuring the late great Buddy Rogers in the magazine.
Nice. Nice.
And for people that don't know, TV in its early days, boxing and wrestling were huge because it was cheap live entertainment.
Right.
And those were mainstays on early TV in the 50s.
People didn't want to see Harry Truman; they wanted to see Gorgeous George.
That's right.
From Chicago.
And Gorgeous George died broke, and he was in his late 40s, and very tragic story.
Yeah, well, if you want the whole story, read John Capoya's book from 2008.
I helped him with that book.
Yeah, excellent book. Yeah. I think the reason you got so much information was because of the fact that his widow, Betty, was still alive, and he interviewed her for a little bit. She passed away a few years. I think she lived to be 100 years old. Gorgeous George was only 48 when he died, I think. Yeah. He'd have been 100. He'd have been 100 last year, something like. No, 100 this year, March 1915, and he died around Christmas time, 1963.
Wow.
The stone in the cemetery in California. I've never seen it, but I've seen pictures of it. It says, "Love to our daddy, Gorgeous George," from Carol and Don as kids.
Wow. And what else do you have?
We've all seen The Godfather, right?
Sure.
Hey.
That's Lenny Montana.
As a wrestler.
As a wrestler, he played Luca Brasi in The Godfather. Luca Brasi in The Godfather.
Yes.
Who swims?
This is an autographed. This is an autographed card from 1953, signed by Lenny when he was a wrestler.
Okay.
And you have a whole bunch of wrestlers on there. They would fans would send cards, requests to the wrestling office, and then they would have all them wrestlers sign it, whoever they wanted, and then they would send it back to the fans. So this one has Tarzan Hewitt on it, Lenny Montana, Anthony Araka, two of Tony Cosenza. Remember Tony Cosenza?
Yeah.
Cola Quariani.
Sure.
Cola Quariani was in the movie...
Requiem for a Heavyweight.
No. Cola Quariani was in a movie called The Killing with Sterling Hayden.
Oh, that's a great, that's a Kubrick, early Kubrick.
Yeah, that's right.
Which wrestlers?
Baron Gattoni, Gene Stanley, and another name I can't make out on there, but from the 1950s.
Which wrestlers were in Rod Serling's Requiem for a Heavyweight?
Haystacks Calhoun.
That's right.
At the end, when Anthony Quinn played the wrestler, went to the ring.
How great was Anthony Quinn?
I liked Anthony Quinn.
I just watched Zorba the Greek. It's probably one of the best movies ever made. What a great film.
Yeah, La Strada. Which I don't know if he did that before Zorba. No, Zorba's later, I think. Strada's 51.
Zorba's like 1964 or so.
Yeah. Zorba's later.
What an unbelievable
You ever seen La
film.
Strada?
Sure.
He was fathering kids into his 80s, wasn't he?
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
that's right.
Oh, yeah.
I've seen Anthony Quinn in spaghetti westerns, Cross 110th Street.
Cross
Great
110th
film.
Street.
Bobby Womack soundtrack.
There you go.
That's right.
There you go.
This is like stream of consciousness. We go from wrestling to La Strada to Bobby Womack.
There you go.
But, so Scott, what's your take on wrestling in 2015?
My take on wrestling, it doesn't exist anymore.
It's gone from wrestling to sports entertainment.
Can you watch the? I think I watched Raw a few weeks ago. They had Kane dressed in a suit, shirt and a tie, with an apron on, selling hot dogs to Larry the Cable Guy, and squirting mustard on Santino Marella's neck. And
you have Grumpy the Cat and a giant bunny rabbit. And
then they had a Russian in the ring.
Rusev?
Yeah, with a blonde woman, cutting his benign promo, and Sergeant Slaughter comes out, and then they did a run-in with somebody. Then they cut to a commercial, and then the Big Show came out and talked for half an hour. So, you know, I just got kicked off of a Facebook page that I criticized one of the quote-unquote living legends on, and I'm not going to even get into that, but people don't like to hear the truth, I guess, about the way it is today. I mean, you know, what we grew up on was sacred to us, and we don't have it anymore, right?
But I do recommend Lucha Underground on the El Rey Network. I recommend Ring of Honor, Pro Wrestling Guerrilla. There's still good wrestling out there.
New Japan.
In New Japan, of
Yep.
course.
All Japan still exists? I don't even know. Do they still exist?
I believe.
Mr. Hattori works for one of them. I met him at a convention a few years back. I think he works. He was a heel manager in Florida in the day, remember?
So it's much like music today. You have to pick and choose, and there's quality music, there's quality wrestling.
Yeah.
You have to search it out.
Yeah, things evolved. The dinosaurs.
Or devolved.
The dinosaurs. Yeah, the dinosaurs died. Kevin Sullivan, who I idolized over the years, had said in an interview, "This can't," and not in a critical way. He said, "This can't be the final product." Probably for the same reasons that we say it, but you know, there's no wrestling content on the show anymore, and you see the same people year in and year out anymore, and there's no territories anymore to watch, and you don't have this and you don't have that, and it's set towards a market where the father is going to take the child to the auditorium, wherever it may be, you know, spend money on T-shirts, drinks, popcorn, DVDs. They're going to yell and scream. They don't know what a wrist lock is from a wristwatch, and that's the market they tapped into, and they've been very successful with it. Then you have your WrestleMania once a year, which draws a lot of revenue, a lot of money. All the cities want to have it, right?
It used to be a very blue-collar sport. We'd go to the Garden. It was $3 to $7 a ticket, and you had the Polish hero and the Italian strongman, and it was a very different sport back in the day.
Heels and faces. Then when they exposed when the business got exposed the way it did, kayfabe, when you lost that, the mystique went away to a degree, and you can peek behind the curtain and see everything now, and that's a part of the show too. And
but the greed kicked in. It became very corporate. At Madison Square Garden now, $599 for a VIP ticket. I mean, this used to be a blue-collar sport.
They have the product today, you can't bond with it. I find the product today is very impersonal. You can't bond with any of these people like you used to bond with Nikolai when he would sing the Russian national anthem, or you'd bond with the original Sheik. Whether you hated him or not, what he did was unbelievable. And to keep the mystique of that character, there had to be kayfabe. And till the day he died, I think he carried that out. And I believe at his funeral, the priest didn't refer to his birth name, referred to him as the Sheik at his own funeral.
Wow.
Could you imagine that?
Interesting.
Protecting your image to that degree. But there are no images to protect anymore, right?
I like when the Big Show has turned 32 times. That's very effective also.
I don't know how anybody can watch it week in and week out, week in and week out. You see the same people week in and week, and then you see
John Cena and
Triple
Randy
H
Orton
come to the ring with a suit on and talking to a microphone, and people are screaming and hollering. I don't understand.
Cena and Orton have wrestled 319
Probably,
times.
yeah.
No exaggeration.
Probably.
That's the actual number, 319 times.
That's another part of the problem. Like if you take a guy like The Rock, who's made it over into mainstream status as an actor or anything else, these people have nobody else to work with. You have to have peanut butter with the jelly. You have to have cheese on the pizza or mustard on the ham sandwich, because you need opposites attract, right?
Right.
So you seem very sad and depressed by all this.
I don't. No, I'm not really. I'm just commentating on what I see as the wrestling industry. WCW was as bad as it was at the end. You used to like to, a channel serve at the end just to see how bad it was going to be. In the early 2000s, before everything was bought out and monopolized.
It is worth seeing on the WWE Network. They have a show called Legends of Wrestling where they have panel discussions like we're doing.
Yeah.
That's a quality show.
That, yeah. I think I think that's their version of shoot interviews.
So, anyway, we're going to wrap this segment up. Scott, is there any way to contact you? Or?
Oh, you can see me on Facebook. I'm on Facebook, and Scott Wilson is my name, and leave it at that. I think it's a good way to go.
Okay.
I don't want to have thousands of young, nice-looking women calling my house.
That's right. We don't want that to happen. Yeah. Especially if you're wearing that outfit.
Thanks for having me, Evan. Thanks for having me. And I like to really, if I could plug something, it would be John Capoya's book about Gorgeous George. Anybody that's interested in Gorgeous George and the phenomenon that really started all of it, you would need to read that book. It's the only one-of-a-kind thing out there. The part where he's down and out at the end, and Dick Byer, the Destroyer, comes into the bar when no one's patronizing his bar and suggests a bunch of final matches at that historic venue that we love, the Olympic Auditorium. It was just fascinating reading. And to find out that most of his capes that were worth a lot of money to collectors now wound up in a trailer out back outside his bar that really didn't succeed too well was mind-boggling to read. And he also affected Bob Dylan.
How was that?
The story about Bob Dylan in the book is that Bob Dylan was just out of school or something, and I think it was in Hibbing, Minnesota, playing a little concert somewhere, and for some reason, Gorgeous George walks through the door and says, at the time, Bob Dylan didn't have knowledge of his identity in music or where he wanted to go, and Gorgeous George said to him, "You're going to make it happen, don't worry," something like that. And then Bob Dylan said, to this day, that was always an inspiration to me.
Wow.
So, small world.
Wow. Interesting.
Small world, yeah. Fascinating book. Read the book if you can.
Oh, yeah. It's one of the best books ever written on wrestling.
You need to do a book on Gorgeous George.
I'm going to do a book about my my sojourn into the surreal world of show business. Wrestlers, porn queens, rappers, etc., so on. Be an interesting interesting book. And I have written a book, Scott. It's called Apartment 4B, like in Brooklyn.
I've read it.
About the turbulent
East
Flatbush of the 60s and 70s.
What about Hey Cabby?
That's really my dad's book. My dad was a cab driver for 27 years. Picked up Marilyn Monroe, Judy Garland.
Paul Newman. Almost had a fight with Paul Newman, right?
Paul Newman, etc., so on.
Did he ask him for an autograph? That was the reason?
I'll tell you the Paul Newman story really quickly. My dad's driving the taxi. There's two women in the back seat, two passengers. Paul, in front of him is a motorcycle, stops on the dime, and my father almost hits him. And it was the fault of the motorcyclist. So the guy starts cursing at my father. My father never liked that. My father was a tough guy. He was all city basketball for Curtis High School. So anyway, my father gets out of the taxi, and the guy in the motorcycle comes towards him. They're ready to go at it. The guy pulls off his helmet. It's Paul Newman. It's Paul Newman. I'm talking in the 60s, in his prime, like #1 box office. So they're winding up, and they're ready to go, and this cop breaks it up, and the kick line to the story is, in his back pocket, my father had tickets to see Paul Newman and Joanne Woodward on Broadway.
Oh, my.
I couldn't make this up.
Oh, my.
It's in the book, Hey Cabby. But anyway, true story, true story.
Didn't your father pick up Richard Nixon, too, and Jackie Onassis?
He picked up Richard Nixon. Jackie Onassis, Jackie Kennedy said to my father, if you had the time, the energy, and the money, you could go out every night of your life in New York and do something different. She really loved New York.
Yes,
and
absolutely.
it's absolutely true.
Absolutely true. She really did.
Yeah. You could go to a different restaurant, different club, different museum, every night of your life if you wanted to.
She was a book lover. She had an unbelievable
She worked for a publishing
Well, she edited it double. Actually, I just read
Doubleday,
something.
right? Doubleday, yeah.
That she
editor,
edited.
yep.
I just read something that she edited.
I could pretty much guarantee this is the only show on planet Earth where you go from Gorgeous George to Jackie O. And on that note...
thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Scott Wilson, wrestling journalist, dear friend of mine. We were just at your daughter's wedding. It was great.
Worked out nice, yeah.
Beautiful wedding, nice people.
Thank you.
There you go. And folks, just want to wish you a Happy New Year, of course. When we come back, a poetry set from John Winnell and a live music set from Tommy Maher. Don't you dare go anywhere.
We're going to do a live commercial. Hi, I'm Renee Marie. I'm the president of Language of Love Incorporated Foundation. I'm really happy to tell you that we're going to be doing a Language of Love telethon on March 29, 2015 from 2 p.m. to 8 p.m. Please look for the location on my website, ReneeMarieLanguageOfLove.org. And once again, it's ReneeMarieLanguageOfLove.org. And the show will be hosted on the Madhouse TV. It really is important for you to be aware of strokes and aphasia. Strokes is the third leading cause of death in America and the first leading cause of disability. And it really is something that plays no favoritism. And it also really comes when you're not expecting. Nobody expects to have a stroke, and nobody expects to suffer from aphasia, and it really does play a huge, making a huge impact in your life and change your life in one split second. So we look forward to having everyone join us once again on March 29, 2015 from 2 p.m. to 8 p.m. And you could follow us on ReneeMarieLanguageOfLove.org. Once again, it's ReneeMarieLanguageOfLove.org. And we look forward to seeing you. God bless.
Are you planning an event and want to include entertainment, but you're not sure where to turn? Act1Entertainment.net has provided over 1,500 events with quality, affordable live entertainment at private parties, corporate affairs, festivals, bike rallies, and more. Act 1 will fit into your budget. They're friendly, reliable, and do all the legwork for you. They take all major credit cards. Log on to Act1Entertainment.net for a free, no-obligation price quote, or call 631-758-3505 for a brochure. You'll be happy you did.
Okay, in honor of the new year, I'm going to read 2 new ones and an older poem. And this one is called The End of a Circle. Dust on the highway, past the old church where geese lay their eggs and wait for dawn. Outside the window, streets are as silent as leaves. The air is cold and breath is visible like a dragon's song. Afternoon's fire rises. We meet again at the end of a year's circle. Our words keep everything hidden. No one really listens, but we bid our thanks and offers of peace. Does anyone remember the blood that spilled, lying on the grass, a knife poised, glinting in heat? Do you cry when alone, hiding away hours while birds come to the window, searching for food? What waits in the shadows? Are we protected by songs, or are we lured to the sea by the sweet callings of mermaids? I tip over the railing and crash amongst the chilly waves. I can still taste the salt upon your breath as my eyes collide with the brightness of the sun. This is called My Traveling Companion. E like energy enabling underground spark. I can still see the star of the Ottoman Turks in your soft brown eyes. The rain had us seeking shelter. Birds that only yesterday flooded the sky, making endless revolutions like perfect ellipses, carving music in the clouds, are hidden. We hold each other in a grasp of words, carving music into the light. You leaving the confines of the city to return to yet another faraway terminal where the rain holds you captive in the turrets of the night. And to end, this is called The Woodpile. Fluorescent tubes slow time, sleepy confusion, residues of days past, counting time deep within the belly of the Holland Tunnel until the inevitable slip into another state. We've all grown, each of us uglier, a widened rift between us. Was it that long ago we ran away, only to get our heads bashed in the schoolyard? We passed through smelly terminals, waiting while battles erupted with deaf beggars who only wanted change, and we had nothing to give. Each time we wake, sorrow's uncertainty gapes from the mirror, wondering how the beautiful boy who'd flown to the moon on the back of a camel took his life near the woodpile, the one we stacked so evenly. Thank you. Happy New Year.
All right. I'm only doing this for Evan Ginsberg because I'm a fill-in here for the show. So this is not my normal thing, but I'll give it a whack for Evan because I respect him. So we'll give a little respect. I think we're going to do a James Brown and a Wilson Pickett because they're two of my biggest idols. I love them. I think. I think. I feel good, like I knew I would. Well, I feel so good, like I knew I would. So good, so good, I've got you. Hey, I feel nice, like a sugar and spice. Well, I feel so nice, like a sugar and spice. So nice, I've got you. Hey! When I hold you in my arms, I know you're gonna give me no harm. And when I hold you in my arms, I'm not gonna do you no harm. And I feel good like I knew I would. Well, I feel so good like I knew I would. So good, I've got you. Hey! When I hold you in my arms, I know you're gonna give me no harm. When I hold you in my arms, I'm not gonna do you no harm. And I feel good like I knew I would. Well, I feel so good like I knew I would. So good, I've got you. Hey, so good, like I knew I would. I feel so good, like I knew I would. So good, good, I've got you. Wow, so good, I've got you. Hey, so good. Woo, little James Brown. You're way too kind. Way too kind. All right, we'll try a little Wilson. My man Wilson. All right, we need a second to cue it up. The band is getting ready. The crowd is getting thicker. All 4 or 5 of us. There you go. Mustang Sally, yeah. I think you better slow your Mustang down. Yeah, Mustang Sally now, baby. Woo! I think you better slow your Mustang down, 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 down. Got to slow it down now, girl. You keep on running around now, Sally. Have to put your big feet on the ground. Yes, I do. Yes, I do. Come on, everybody now. All you wanna do is ride around and come on, ride, Sally, ride. Hey, yeah, yeah. All you wanna do is ride around and come on, ride, Sally, ride. Hey, yeah, yeah. All you wanna do is ride around, baby, said ride, Sally, ride. Hey, yeah, yeah. All you wanna do is ride around and come on, ride, Sally, ride. But one is early mornings, yeah. You're gonna be wiping those weeping eyes. Yes, you are now. Come on, go tell you a little story now. I bought you a brand new Mustang. Talk about 1966 now. You come on with some of that dignified woman. I don't want to let you ride. Come on and Mustang Sally now, baby. Woo! I think you better slow your Mustang down, 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 down. Got to slow it down now, girl. You keep on running around now, Sally. Oh, have to put your big feet on the ground. Yes, I do. Yes, I do now. One more time. Come on around. All you wanna do is ride around and come on, ride, Sally, ride. Hey, yeah, yeah. All you wanna do is ride around and come on, ride, Sally, ride. Hey, yeah, yeah. All you wanna do is ride around, baby, said ride, Sally, ride. Hey, yeah, yeah. All you wanna do is ride around and come on, ride, Sally, ride. But one is early mornings, yeah. Woo! You got to slow down now. Yes, you do. Gotta slow it down now, girl. Yeah. And ladies and gentlemen, the Evan Ginsberg Show live in the Madhouse. All right.